If your job at a healthcare facility includes disinfecting against viruses, you know prevention is the best medicine, and maintaining healthy spaces starts with a healthy cleaning routine. Grainger's world-class supply chain helps ensure you have the quality products you need when you need them, from disinfectants and cleaning supplies to personal protective equipment, so you can help deliver a clean bill of health. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundlesssuccess to join today. Let's get you to the next level. Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase, the podcast that helps you succeed in your business, career, and life. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group, and with me, as always, is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
I am doing wonderful, Eric. It's beautifully sunny out there. It's light out till 7 o'clock now because daylight saving time just started, and it's 60 degrees, so life is good.
Yeah, we've got nice spring weather all over the country, although we've got some severe weather coming later this week. So enjoy the spring while it's here. And you mentioned daylight savings time. Of course, as we record this, we are just coming off the first weekend of daylight savings time. We switched the clocks back Saturday into Sunday, which actually makes today the least productive day of the year in the United States, primarily because of people trying to catch up with and get their bodies used to daylight savings time. For some people, they can catch up right away. Some it takes a few days. But overall, today is actually known as the least productive day of the year, which is why I thought we should talk about a productivity tool and how we might be able to improve our productivity today. And what we're going to be talking about is time blocking. Now, time blocking is a very simple concept. It's you take your calendar, your day planner, and you literally block out time to do certain things. But there's a little more to it than that. There's 4 basic types of time blocks that you should be using, particularly to run a business. And the first one is task blocks. These are blocks of about 45 minutes to an hour, and they're there to complete important tasks. You assign one task to each block, and you focus on nothing else but that task. You put your head down, you don't answer the phone, you don't check your email. You're just working on that task. The second type of block is a strategic block. This is a longer block. This is about 3 hours, and you usually only need one of these blocks per week. And this is dedicated to high-value activities. This is not the day-to-day work. This is you're working on your business as opposed to in your business. This is where you plan strategy, put together your processes. This is where you build your business. The third type is called buffer blocks. And this is time set aside to handle low-value tasks. That's when you answer your emails, your phone calls, filing, other administrative work. This way you get that done in the buffer blocks, and it doesn't interrupt your task blocks or your strategic blocks. You're still getting everything done, but you're separating the type of work so that you can focus on what's called deep work rather than interrupting to do your menial tasks. The final type of block is called a breakout block. And this is time specifically reserved for rest, recovery, and activities that energize you, like hobbies, time with the family. This is where these blocks are there to help you avoid burnout. So, those are the different types of blocks that we use in time blocking. Now, it's important to use all of them because they all build on each other. They all have specific functions. But what's really important is a mindset shift. When you use time blocking, you have to stop thinking of your calendar as an 8-hour workday. You have to schedule free time. You have to schedule time to relax. That's what those breakout blocks are for. So, in order to be truly productive, you need to look at your life as a whole, not just your work schedule, and put together blocks for each part of it. Now, in home, a buffer block rather than email or phone calls could be used for doing the dishes. Other menial tasks that don't require thought. Certainly, breakout blocks are used to spend time with family, friends, go to a ball game, play in a ball game, whatever it is that you like doing. So those are the blocks. And that's the first step right there, is to shift your mindset into using these blocks 24/7 and figuring out what your calendar is going to look like.
Yeah, that looks like quite a plan. I mean, I've heard about time management and so on and so forth, but to put it this way, to have it broken out like that, I mean, that covers everything. Obviously, the tasks themselves or the work that you're doing and the strategy blocks during the week obviously is really, really important to do. But we've talked about time management in the past as far as scheduling out months ahead of time for things like vacations and personal time and so on and so forth. And what this does is it breaks them down and puts them more into a daily and a weekly plan rather than the whole picture plan. But again, it all starts out with prioritizing what you're looking to do and organizing things that way, which we talk about. And then, what are the most important projects that you have coming up, setting up the priorities as far as what's the most important thing, putting a time on that, and putting those tasks right into those time blocks that you're talking about. These could be the 45-minute to 1 hour task blocks to get these things done as far as your projects go and that kind of thing. So it's a really, really great way to keep things organized and to start out with your goal list and chunk it down into its smallest parts and really get them scheduled to get them done.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, is getting things done. And as you said, it starts with identifying your priorities. Once you've understand how the blocks work, now you have to fill them with actual activities. Well, that's going to be your priorities. So list your top goals and tasks for the day and the week, or further out, even if you're doing this, for, say, on a monthly basis. Figure out exactly what you have to do and block out the time you need to do it. Now, sometimes you have to juggle things. That's part of what the buffer blocks are for, to give you time to put out fires. But I actually had a conversation with a recruiter. This was probably about 10 years ago, and we were talking about time management and time blocking. And she said, she can't wait for her emails to get to a buffer block because people are calling first thing in the morning. They need a temp for that day. So she's got to be available that, first thing to answer those emails and answer those phone calls. Well, I pointed out to her, that's a major daily task for you. So that wouldn't go in a buffer block. So while many of us think of email and phone calls as be, putting it in a buffer block because it's not crucial to our work. For her, it was. So that became a task block. So you do have to understand what your work is like. Not everybody's calendar is going to look the same. You have to individualize it for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Obviously, you have to take a look at what your business is. If your business is communications and helping people out doing those other things, I'm glad that you brought that up, that it's so important to put your major tasks for your business in that. For a lot of businesses and most businesses, uh, those low value things like email and phones and so on and so forth, they belong in the buffer blocks. But if it's the main part of your business,
Right.
I can understand a little bit of pushback when somebody's listening to you where that is their business.
Exactly. So, but you have to understand that if that's your business, then that's not a buffer block, that's a task block. And yes, going off on a little tangent here, having been one of those temps back when I was in college that would be called first thing in the morning saying, well, we've got an opening for today. We need you to get to such and such a business. Yes, it is very important that you're there taking those calls, taking those emails. So for that, that is a task. That's not a buffer. Filing can be a buffer, pretty much universally. But you have to understand what it is that your priorities are to determine what goes in which block. And then you also need to focus on high impact activities that move you forward towards your goals. So that's something we've talked about a lot, where you have to break your tasks down to what is going to do the most good, moving you forward. Make things, simple steps and put each step into those task blocks. So again, there is quite a bit of planning that goes into this before you actually set up your calendar. You have to know your tasks. You have to know your goals. These are all things we've talked about in the past. The time blocking comes during the implementation process. This is about how you take all of those ideas that you want to get done or have to get done and put them in a plan to actually achieve them.
Yeah, I mean, for all businesses, it all starts out with the business plan to begin with. What is the purpose of the business? What's your value add that you're providing, and so on and so forth. So we have done several podcasts on that, but all that has to be done so that you can come up with a time block plan in the first place. Otherwise, everything
Yes,
seemed like buffer blocks to you.
right. Yeah, you don't want everything to seem like a buffer block. And you also don't want everything to seem like a task block. Because if all you were to schedule were task blocks, one, it's a recipe for burnout. Two, you wouldn't be leaving time to do all those little things which would distract you from actually getting things done. And also, you wouldn't be leaving time for the strategic work, which unfortunately is very common. That's what people bump. And that's why they often feel that they're, running in circles or, spinning their wheels and not getting anywhere because they're not taking the time to do the strategic work necessary to figure out where all of these tasks fit together.
Yeah, I mean, the last block that you talk about is the breakout blocks, which obviously they're very important for long-term planning, but we've talked many times about daily time management and the importance of not doing anything for more than 2 or 3 hours at a time. And you have to put something in there to refresh every day. So obviously your task blocks are going to be part of every day, but I would imagine what we're talking about here is that the breakout blocks have to be part of that every single day also.
Well, the breakout blocks can sort of float. Some weeks you could have breakout blocks on every day. Some weeks you might only have one or two during the week. Um, breakout blocks tend to be longer blocks, so you don't need as many of them. You're talking about putting together blocks of 2 to 3 hours for a breakout block. So
Okay.
when you do it that way, you only really need one or two a week. However, if you don't have the time, and we've all hit this where we're very busy, we've got a lot of task blocks. If you don't have the time for a 3 hour breakout block, then yes, put in 30-minute to an hour breakout blocks each day. You need to make sure you're getting that breakout time in, but it's not necessarily going to be, you know, the same amount of time every week or the same schedule every week. If you can do the same schedule every week, that's ideal. And I know loads of couples who do this, they call it date night. They say, on this night, we're not going to work. We're going to, go out and enjoy ourselves. And they do it the same night every week. That's a fantastic way to do it. If you can't do that, however, you still need to make sure to get those breakout blocks in. Otherwise, you're going to face burnout.
Yeah.
And burnout is very real and very common.
Yeah. And obviously, I mean, you do need to take, don't call them a breakout block, but you do need to take breaks periodically during the day because you just can't keep your mind going at 100% for hours and
Yep.
hours at a time unless you're superhuman. It's just not going to work. And the other thing that we do talk about is some people are best doing things in the morning, some people are best doing things at night. And so you have to really analyze how things work for you too. Just by experimenting, then you'll figure out what the best pattern for you is. So some people are morning people like
Yes.
me. Some people like you get a lot of things accomplished at night. And so between the two of us, I guess we got the whole day covered. But anyway,
Right. Yeah.
it's
And and the simplest way to make sure you get a breakout block every day is to actually break out time for lunch. Half an hour to an hour put in the lunch period as a block, and don't work through it. Don't go, that is a breakout time. That is time for you to get away from work and recover. You can also, depending on, what doing, if you've got a breakout block, say scheduled for 5 to 6, that you're going to be doing something with your family, you can use a task block for your lunch and meet with coworkers. Don't necessarily do work, but network with them. Find out what they're up to and add in a little networking time as a task block.
yeah. And obviously, as far as these best practices for time blocking, we talked about starting with the to-do list, estimating the duration, scheduling everything. Using a calendar or a planner is obviously very, very important. And I would imagine the more flexible that is, where you can change things on the fly, that's a great tool to use. I mean, you know me, I used to do most of mine manually on my spreadsheets and so on and so forth, but there are some great tools, including what you created out there, where you can put these things down, but you have the ability to manipulate things as you have to do that. Because obviously, not everything's going to run flatline. Things are always going to be up and
Yes.
down, and you're going to have a lot of buffer blocks in there if you don't do that. And that's
Yeah, sometimes schedules get thrown out the window when something absolutely urgent comes up. Ideally, you should have enough buffer blocks in your day so that you can deal with emergencies without throwing the whole schedule away. You can flip a buffer block and a task block if you need to. But yes, putting these on a calendar is crucial because you do need to see what all of these blocks are. And you can do, if you do it on a paper planner or a paper calendar, use different colored pens and pencils for each type of block so that at a glance, you know what's coming up. If you're using something like Google Calendar or Outlook or Apple Calendar, also you can do things in different colors. Certainly, the online calendars make it much easier to move things around if needed because you can literally just grab it and drag it to a new spot. There's also a tool called Notion. Now, Notion is a free tool, works across all platforms, but there's a bit of a learning curve. So I warn you about that. But it is a very powerful tool for planning. And you can download free templates for task lists, time blocking, planning for different projects. And you can start from those templates. You don't have to start with a blank screen and try to figure it out on yourself. But I do recommend people look into Notion. Again, it does have a learning curve, so it's not for everybody, but it is a very powerful tool to use.
Yeah, I imagine most of these online tools like Outlook, I know a lot of them have a reminder system where you can plug it right in your
Yep.
calendar. So you do get reminded with alarms and so on and so forth. And obviously, that's one of the nice things about having that electronically there as opposed to me having to look at my spreadsheet every day as far as when the tasks are coming up and then plugging it in with alarms in my cell phone. Having the reminders is a great tool to have. And I would imagine most of the online tools that you're talking about have that reminder system in there.
Yeah, they all have different reminders to use. If you are most comfortable with a paper calendar or a paper planner, if you want to go old school, add to your system a kitchen timer. And at the beginning of each block, simply set the timer for the length of the block and it'll ring when you're finished.
Yep. Or I have gotten technology advanced enough to actually be able to use the timer on my phone where that's a little bit easier because actually the kitchen timer that I had broke and I was using that for cooking one time and it wasn't too cool as far as what was going on the grill. So, but yeah, I mean, basically, if you have a timer to keep you in line, that's so important. So,
Yes, and you do need a timer for all of this, whether it's online, on your phone, you use an old-fashioned kitchen timer, you do need to set a timer at the beginning of each block because you want to make sure you get your work done, but you also want to make sure that it doesn't bleed into other blocks. Now, if you do have a task that you know is going to take an hour and a half, then schedule two 45-minute task blocks, but break them up with a buffer block. Even this way, if something comes up, if someone's trying to get a hold of you on the phone while you're in the first task block, you don't have to wait till the all the way to the end to get back to them. You give yourself a little time, and if nothing else, use the buffer blocks to stop looking at the computer. That is one of the biggest mistakes most people make is that they get into the groove and they stare at the computer for 2.5, 3.5 straight hours. And by the time they're done, they are cooked. They can't get any more work done because their eyes are so screwed up. You need to be able to schedule blocks where you are not looking at a computer screen.
yeah, I hear you loud and clear on that. Obviously, you and I are both do a lot of work as far as planning presentations and this and that, whatever. So we get stuck in that analytical and editing and so on and so forth. And before you know it, a couple of hours have gone and saying, holy cow, what's going on here? And scheduling that buffer block between the tasks, that's one of the big takeaways that I have. I'm going to be talking about that early because at the end you always ask what the takeaways are. But that one I just wrote down, buffer task. So
Yes, you always have to have the buffer blocks, and you can also think of them as break blocks. We call them buffer blocks because occasionally you do have to do other work in them. Again, checking your email, answering messages, things like that. But if you don't have to do your email at that point, and I know folks that schedule specific buffer blocks just for email, and they only do it twice a day, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. And buffer blocks in the middle of the day are simply used to recover from tasks. So it's to shift your focus away, give your brain a moment to breathe, think about what you've done, think about what you're about to do, and prepare for the next task. This way you're taking that stress break. And you can always, if you work at home, you can always, use a buffer block to grab something from the kitchen. If you work in an office and you've got a kitchen set up there, same thing. If you don't have a setup, you can use one to, run out to the corner store or local cafeteria and grab something. So you can think of buffer blocks as break blocks. And those two things are interchangeable because, again, sometimes you'll be doing the menial tasks, sometimes you'll be taking a break. The key, though, to both the buffer and break blocks are don't overload your schedule. Leave time for unexpected tasks and leave time to rest. That's what those blocks are for. It's to make sure that you can handle what gets thrown at you during the day without making too big a dent in your schedule, so that you're getting the important work done even as the urgent work gets thrown at you.
Sounds like a great way to do things. I will never think of time blocking the same as I will be moving ahead for sure. So.
And then another very important thing is to protect your time blocks. If you are in the middle of a task block and you are in an office and somebody comes by to have a conversation, don't hesitate to tell them, this is not a good time. I'll have time to chat, and tell them when your next buffer block is. So treat your time blocks like appointments. Don't let distractions or low priority tasks take over. And that's one of the things, most of us don't take advantage of this enough, but your phone has a do not disturb mode. You can turn off notifications for email. You should be doing that during important task blocks. And let people know, this is not a time you have to chat. This is a time that you have to get this work done. And then at the end of the day, take a look at what you did. Take a look what didn't get done, and make adjustments to the time blocks for the next day to make sure you can get all of that important work done. Again, urgent work is always going to come down, and we've talked about this in the past, the difference between urgent work and important work. And the fact of the matter is, nothing you do is going to stop urgent work from showing up. This is how you deal with urgent work without it derailing the important work. And that's why time blocking is important, because it lets you get everything that you have to get done. There's enough flexibility that you can move things around if things get, really overheated. But it's also good to make sure that you're getting the work that absolutely needs to be done. Now, I will say there's one thing that will trip people up. And if you start doing time blocking, you'll probably hit this more times than you care to admit. But you have to be realistic about how long a task is going to take. If you think a task is going to take 45 minutes, schedule an hour time block. If you think it's going to take half an hour, schedule a 45-minute time block. Things tend to take longer than we expect them to. So make sure you're leaving enough time so that you're not overscheduling, you're not running into other task blocks, and you're not stressing yourself out at the end of a task block because you don't have enough time to finish.
That sounds like just a wonderful habit to get into because a lot of people are worried about not getting things done. So putting that call a little buffer block into the task block there as far as like a couple extra minutes to do that. I think it's a fantastic idea. The other thing, I know that we probably have a lot of solopreneurs out there listening, but we probably have a lot of people that are working in offices also. And your tip as far as somebody walking by the door wanting to start a conversation, I think that this time block system that we're talking about today is something that employee could probably bring and share with the whole office so that everybody gets on the same page there. And it's working the same way, but it will also potentially avoid hard feelings.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think most people understand when you tell them, I've got a very important task, I've got to finish this, I'll be happy to talk with you once I'm done. Because we've all been in that situation. And speaking of finishing, we are just about at the end of our time. So, Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our listeners?
Well, I love the system. 1, 2, 3, 4. Task blocks, strategic blocks. Those are the important ones, and the buffer blocks are in between, and the breakout blocks let you take care of yourself, which is so, so important. So, again, it all starts with your purpose and your plan and what you're doing. But if you can break that up into the 4 different time blocks and schedule them, track them, I think it's going to be a wonderful system to work with. And I've learned a whole lot today. So I thank you very much, Eric.
Yeah, time blocking is a fantastic system. It's been talked about in numerous books. The 12-Week Year by Brian Moran, Getting Things Done by David Allen. Most productivity experts use some form of time blocking to schedule their days. And the reason they do it is because it works. It's flexible enough to handle things as they come down the pipe, but strict enough that it makes sure that you get done what absolutely has to get done without putting things off, and still gives you enough time to make sure that you don't burn out. So it is a great system. There's loads of information on time blocking on the internet. So if you're interested in the topic, certainly look up more and see how you can customize it and what software you can use that you may already be using to customize it to work the way you want it to work. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode of the podcast at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcasts app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.